Welcome to another episode of Primo Talks. When it comes to life, you got to have those people around you who have those gifts and talents like you have in order for you to implement those things, so you know that the things that you're doing is moving you towards those goals, those dreams, those realities that you saw in your life. This is not the time for you to take a step back. It's a time for you to be teleported. This is a place where you can actually get the information that you need that you can implement today. Let's talk. Welcome back. Today I want to talk about choices and journeys. For you and me, we all have a choice to make whenever we decide to do something. But today I'm going to do something different. I'm not going to talk about finances from a standpoint of me giving you advice. No, not going to do that. What I am going to do is I'm going to take the position of this. I'm going to have a financial conversation. That's all I want to do, have a financial conversation. Allow you to begin to develop the skills that you need in order to actually improve the way that you kind of think, and at the same time, the way that you function. Now, we're living in a time where it's very unique. I mean, we're coming out of a pandemic, then we're coming out of a growth of a pandemic where we had several months of success on the market. Now, all of a sudden, we find ourselves having the first quarter of 2022 having a low quarter. 2 quarters in a row, 2 down quarters in a row is considered a recession. Here's my prediction today. The United States of America, by the time the feds come out and speak, before the end of the month of June of 2022, will enter a recession. And that's the reason I want to have a financial conversation. Now, I'm only telling you this for me. You don't have to take my advice from it at all. You can do your own research. But for me and my family, we recognize the pattern in this, what season we're in. We're getting ready to go into a recession. Now, for some of you, I'm going to use a recession. That's 2 bad quarters consistently of slow growth for GDP. That's going to cause a recession. Now, for you, you might have had months, you might have had a year where your income is affected. So let's look at how a 2 months of lower GDP, not producing what it needs to produce, cause a recession. And let's put your life in a situation where 6 months have done the same thing and you haven't gotten a raise. You're in a recession. One of the keys is choices and journeys. We all have choices to make, and we all have journeys that we can participate in. But today I want you to really focus on some pros of owning a stake of a company. This is some of the pros, and these are my pros. These are going to be very different than anything else you see, because on my list of pros are warning signs that actually help me be better at what I do. So I'm going to give you a little insight to the way I think, a little insight into the way that I write pros. Again, the pros of owning a stake in a company. First pro, being forewarned. It is to be armed with facts when working with a team to deal with matters. When you have a stake in a company versus not having a stake, you're working with a group of people. You're going to have some individuals that's in that group that are astute, which means they have some background experience. We're not referring to fear. We're strictly referring to background with this. So let me give you 4 things that's not on this board, but you need to know it. Some of the prerequisites of wisdom is ignorance. Ignorance means absence of truth. Doesn't mean that you're not capable of understanding. It just means that you're absence of truth in this area where you're about to work. So that's a prerequisite for wisdom. Number 2 is this: knowledge. Knowledge is a collection of truths. Number 3, understanding. Understanding is the assimilation of truths with an S at the end. How come that is important? Because the assimilation of truth, which is understanding, is not just knowing how come I must do this, what are the effects of doing this, and what are the benefits, and who I need to partner with in order to accomplish this. That is what understanding is. How come? Because understanding is the assimilation of truths. And it also clarifies this one statement that a lot of people say that I don't necessarily agree with at all. Why to do something. I'd rather say how come to do it versus why to do it. But for most of my constituents and clients, or most of my relatives and family members, they always say why. So why you do something. That is understanding. Now, what is wisdom? Wisdom is the application of the collection of truths, the understanding of the assimilation of truth, and wisdom comes into the application of truth. Today, if you want to know what wisdom looks like, it is actually defined as a skill. If you've learned how to drive a manual transmission, whether 5-speed or 6-speed, you have a skill. And wisdom today means applying the skill and you do it. There's a lot of people who can't drive a manual transmission today because most of the generations in the last, that's especially young, are being taught how to drive automatics. There's the percentage of people who are taught to drive an automatic transmission versus a stick. You'd be surprised. It's over 89% are taught to actually drive a automatic transmission. So we have a large group of the population that can't drive a manual transmission. So they are ignorant because they don't have the skill of truth. Not that they don't have the benefit. If they go out now seeking the truth, which is a manual, next they're going to actually get in the car and they're going to begin to get the knowledge of what certain things are, how to use your left foot, how to go into, where's the reverse at, is it up at the front, or is it at the back, or is it in the middle, where's the reverse. They're going to figure out the collection of truths in order for them to drive that manual, how to balance on the heel, how to properly press the pedal. Well, being forewarned, what does forewarned mean? Whenever you forewarn, means there's somebody in the group who has experience. When you're doing a company, most of us like to go in alone. So we don't have any forewarned. The only thing we do is we're just going to barrel forward. Where's the forewarning? That's the benefit of owning a stake in a company. When you own a stake with a group of people, there's somebody who can actually forewarn so you can work through the details. You need a skill involved. If you don't have that skill, I understand we live in a world that everyone wants to go out here and start their own business and they want to be liberated and don't have nobody else but just them. Let me just tell you, you have nobody. The pro of going in, owning a stake in a company is being forewarned. Number two, you will learn how to have intentions over everything will start to deteriorate. You will learn how to have intention or everything will start to deteriorate. That is a pro. One of the first things you will learn if you ever decided to go into business like I have in the past, many years ago, we're talking about over 20 years, where you go into business for yourself. One of the greatest lessons that you learn is actually doing a newspaper route. I was a kid who had a newspaper route. And you go in that alone. My parents had to sign off and give me permission to do it, but I would deliver papers before I went to school. Well, what I learned was this. If I didn't intentionally, back then there was a book that you had to rip off a tag and you would go and to knock on the people's doors and collect the money. When you collected the money, you gave them the tab, you collected the money. So you knew what each client had to pay for their weekly newspaper. It was important. Some of the most disappointing things I learned was that my issue was here. Everything will start to deteriorate. If I didn't go collect the money because I decided, again, I did this prior to school, but then I wanted to play sports, I started not getting paid. How come? Because people, when I would deliver the paper, they wasn't waking up early in the morning prior to me going to school. They were getting their kids ready for school. So automatically I found myself having less and less money because you would actually pay the difference to the newspaper. There were several times I paid for people's paper. How come? Because I didn't go collect it. Started to deteriorate. Number three, bad things do not require attention. They require neglect. This is a pro. You learn this when you go into business and you have a stake. You learn what neglect really is. You begin to see that you don't have to actually do anything to actually fail. All you have to do is to let inertia take place. It's like you going into your backyard and you decide that you want to plant some tomatoes in your backyard. So you tilt the ground, a little area in your backyard, and you plant these tomatoes. You put a fence up. One of the things you didn't do was go back each week or every 2 weeks to start pulling out the different type of herbs or weeds that grow that are not the tomatoes. Oh, you like, well, I'm just going to let it grow together. Well, you're going to see that inertia is going to take place. And everything in that garden is going to begin to grow that you didn't get out because you didn't know it was already embedded in the soil. Well, that is what happens when we say bad things do not require attention. They require neglect. You cannot neglect a business. That's a pro. You learn that. Now, when you go into your own, you feel that and you deny that. But when you own a stake with someone else, you actually learn that. You don't have to feel it. You don't have to deny. You see it. And they're going to tell you, winter's coming. Winter's coming. And number four, the number one reason businesses fail is because the owners focus on distractions and ignore attentions. That is a pro. The best thing I learned by being in business was the fact that there was nothing that I could ever fail at Only the distractions make me fail. If you are focusing on something, now how do we know what is a distraction from what is not a distraction? Here's the easy answer. Every decision that moves me one step closer to my goal is an intention. But every step that moves me one step away from my goals is intention, which is also known as a distraction. Many entrepreneurs today are focused on so many distractions, inertia's already set in, and they're failing. Now remember, we're living in a time where from January of 2022 to June, the end of this month, we've had 2 consecutive quarters of decline in GDP. That's called a recession. How many quarters have you had in your life of decline? Was it 2-3 years? Because you could be in a recession right now. How come? One of the things is when you take a stake in a company and you already have obligations that you made previously before you started this company, you already have things that are going to be pulling at you. They're saying, hey, especially when the summer. Some of the hardest things for business owners is going through the summertime and they have children because the kids got camp, the family wants to go on vacation, and that is called, no matter how many times you look at that, that is called the most wonderful thing of distractions. You're going to fail. The first couple of years, I had to learn that it's okay not to. I'm totally free to not participate in certain things. Yes, it's a challenge because you're going to send your loved ones, your significant other, or your wife or your kids out on their own. They're going to say, well, daddy can't come, or my boyfriend can't go with me. And you may feel like, man, his life changed. He doesn't think about me. He's putting the business before me. Be careful. You're being a distraction. And inertia going to take in. If he spends time with you versus doing things intentionally, he can't meet the dreams of the family. And let me just explain something to you. People who attend school from grade school to 12th grade spend minimum, unless they fail, 12 years or less in high school. They can spend more years if they fail. 12 years. If you go to a school that has a 4-year program, you're going to spend 4. We can add that on top of the 12. That's how long it'll take for somebody to get their degree or their master's degree in that certain area. It took time. Well, when it comes to choices and journeys, there are going to be some challenges. But here are your pros. Pro number 1, being forewarned. That's the benefit of being able to have a stake and work with a group of people because you have a budding collage of skills. And the reason I said budding because you're going to sometimes butt heads. But if you don't butt heads, you can't think. You don't want your business to be on autopilot. 9 out of 10 business fail. They fail because of this. The number 1 reason businesses fail today and yesterday is because the owners focus on distractions and ignored intentions. That is the reason people fail. This is the reason that if we take 6 months and you haven't gotten a raise, you're failing. You're in your own family recession. Just the same way that 6 months of GDP decline, 6 months of you not getting a raise, or 6 months of your business having 6 months of declines where you're not actually growing, you're in a recession. Sometimes when you learn these things, you say to yourself, oh, now I understand what it means to have a recession. Yes, it's 2 quarters of GDP decline in a 6-month basis. You can have 1 quarter, but the next quarter you don't have that situation, and the next quarter you do, then you don't. That's not a recession. It takes 2 quarters. The question is, what are you going to do about your choices and your journeys? Until next time, this whole week we're going to be talking about choices and journeys, what you can do to change the choices you make in a day, stop recession in your personal life, like right now we're going to be in a recession. And at the same time, enjoy the journey, because these are pros when other people will call them cons. I see it this way. Most people don't grow until they get knocked down. Then they have something to grow from. That is the journey of business and life. Learn to enjoy the knockdowns, because that's the only thing that break you out of autopilot and also out of being inertia. That's right. Now you can be in inertia or you can be entering inertia, Or you could be in a situation where you're not doing things intentionally. You're allowing distractions to take over. And if you do those things, you're entering inertia and you're going to have a problem. Don't forget to subscribe, like, follow CFS Studios. We got more content coming out. Don't forget to also, we got some good things in our merch category. I got a hat out there that I'll be wearing on some of the videos coming up called, Clarity Over Chaos. That's what we all need. We all need to make sure we rock. If you haven't purchased your Clarity Over Chaos hat or shirt, you definitely want to do that today. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.